So welcome everybody, and I'll hand over to Fritz Barth and Sebastian Gronwald to start the small address from Dr. Velling.
Dear Mr. Barth, dear Sir, Madam, a very warm welcome to the conference, the European Chemistry Partnering Conference, from the Ministry of Economics of the North Rhine-Westphalian government in Germany. I regret that I cannot personally join your meeting, your discussions today, but I will send you some very warm greetings from Düsseldorf. The European Chemistry Partnering Conference is a very interesting format. So the conference brings together SMEs, startups, corporates and investors to change ideas and to come out with new corporations. I think it is quite important to bring forward the chemistry industry and the community here. So the chemical industry is of a very high importance for North Rhine-Westphalia. So in such confined space here in North Rhine-Westphalia, where so many chemical companies that produce such diverse products with so many employees. Altogether, 93,000 employees work for the chemical industry in North Rhine-Westphalia, and the turnover is about 42 billion euros. About 1/3 of the German sales in the chemical industry are generated in North Rhine-Westphalia, and it's maybe the main and the most important hotspot of the chemical industry in Germany and even maybe in all over Europe. The chemical industry is in many ways regarded as an enabling industry. Hardly any innovation for further development, for example, the field of electromobility, energy efficiency or healthcare, would be possible without the chemical industry. The chemical industry is an innovation driver and it's essential for the task ahead. The climate change and the energy transition, feeding the world's population of mobility. Without the innovations of the chemical industries, there would be a standstill here. For the chemistry, working together between science and industry and working together with science from this perspective of the industry is very crucial for innovation and research achievements. In North Rhine-Westphalia, we have more than 70 universities, 60 technology and startup centers, and we have over 50 non-university research facilities such as Fraunhofer Institutes or Max Planck Society facilities. And therefore it's one of the densest research networks within Europe, and it provides ideal conditions for technology transfer. An important driver for innovations are startups and spin-offs. Our universities create successful academic spin-offs also in chemistry, and it has improved in the recent years. Just about 2 years ago, we have started a new program which is called Excellence Startup Center, where we provide up to 150 million euros for 6 excellent startup centers at top universities in North Rhine-Westphalia, such as, for example, University in Aachen, in Bochum, Dortmund, in Cologne, in Paderborn, and so far, in Paderborn. So this is a unique opportunity also to bring forward startups from the chemical industry. So the startups in the chemical industry have some very specific challenges. So they need higher investments, more money. The time to market is longer than in other sectors, as for example in the software sector, ICT sectors. And for startups in the chemical industry, it is important to have access to laboratories, to IP support, and of course, possibilities to work together with the chemical industry. Until now, hardly any specialized scale-up centers in the world support startups in the field of sustainable chemistry until they enter the market. So let's come to the Global Entrepreneurship Center. That's exactly where they fill this gap, and there will be a global lighthouse in North Rhine-Westphalia. The Global Entrepreneurship Center will help sustainable tech startups to grow and to reach market maturity. And its core missions are to strengthen the regional startup ecosystem and to put North Rhine-Westphalia on a global map regarding the support for sustainable tech startups. The ministry is very willing to support the Global Entrepreneurship Center to reach this significance. It has already supported a market and feasibility study to develop a business model and to figure out the next steps for successful implementation in North Rhine-Westphalia. The Global Entrepreneurship Center has set ambitious goals. Until 2025, more than 140 startups shall participate in the program, and more than 15 scale-ups shall settle in North Rhine-Westphalia. But I'm quite optimistic that the Global Entrepreneurship Center will really reach these goals. The North Rhine-Westphalian government will do everything which is possible to make the Global Entrepreneurship Center a success. But for making it a success, it is very important for the Global Entrepreneurship Center to work together with partners from industry, with partners from science, but also with partners from the finance sector, with partners who invest money. And therefore, such an event as the event today is very important to bring up these collaborations between Global Entrepreneurship Center and its partner. And therefore, I'm very happy that this meeting takes place. I wish you good discussions and an intensive exchange of ideas. Thank you.
So, yeah, thank you very much as well. Of course, he can't hear us. We heard the introduction from the political side, from the political stakeholders that are participating. And now I hand over to Fritz Barth, who is the responsible founder and visionary person behind the concept, to explain to us what it is all about and how it actually will add up and add to the ecosystem, to the startups ecosystem that's already there, and what it's all about. Fritz, please.
Stefan, before it's my turn, I think it's Holger who should give us a short introduction. Yeah? Holger first.
That's correct. That's correct. I announced Holger. I announced and forgot already. Holger, sorry so much. Sorry so much. All me to blame. But we have Fritz, who's very woken up and he realized early enough. So Holger, please.
Don't mind, Stefan. So for me, it's also a complete new role to have a part besides the opening and the closure of the ECP. So thank you very much for the short introduction, and it's a great honor for me to give this short statement on the Global Entrepreneurship Center. And first of all, even if he is not with us today, it was a really very kind message from Dr. Velling. I would like to say thank you, Dr. Velling, for the support from your side. And you mentioned these ambitious goals of the Global Entrepreneurship Center, and I'm quite sure that we have two main aspects. That is your support on the one hand side from the Ministry of Economic Affairs in North Rhine-Westphalia, and on the other side, we have a fantastic international team, which Friedrich, Barth and Sebastian Gronwald introduced to make it possible, to make it reality what will happen in North Rhine-Westphalia. And so I said we, because that's my new role. So we at ECNP and also my colleague Tobias Kirchhoff with the BCNP consultancy arm of our company are supporting and will support the Global Entrepreneurship Center. And we definitely need such an initiative because we normally speak about the Delhi of Death regarding the chemical startups and also from the bioeconomy sector. And we would like to overcome these higher technology readiness levels from 6 to 9. And I'm quite sure that Friedrich and also Tobias will explain that later on, to overcome that valley of death technology-wise, but also from the financial perspective-wise. We need more startups, but we have to let them grow. And the Global Entrepreneurship Center is such an initiative. And Dr. Velling, you mentioned, it's a lighthouse in North Rhine-Westphalia, but one which will shine globally. And yes, the goals are ambitious, but I mentioned that we have a good team, and the main aspect on that is we have an interdisciplinary team, because I'm a chemist. I grew up, a chemist can do everything, but that's not true. We need the interaction between the different disciplines, chemistry, bioeconomy, renewables, digitization, and all these things, also the economic perspective. What are the markets? What's the growing perspective? And how can we support sustainability? All this has to come together, and the Global Entrepreneurship Center or GEC or GEC, whatever you name it, it's that kind of project. So I'm really very proud to be part of it with the European Chemistry Partnering, and to bring people together. Maybe we can here make a start, and then we can make the best out of it the following years together with you from North Rhine-Westphalia, but also together with you all in the team and the fantastic GEC team, to make it really a brilliant project, a worldwide one. Thank you very much. That's all from my side at the moment.
Holger, thank you very much. What I find very appealing is that North Rhine-Westphalia is the birthplace of one of the most well-known startups in chemical industry, only that it is now over 100 years ago. And to be successful, you need cooperation and you need an ecosystem. And North Rhine-Westphalia has that tradition for many, many decades and has the knowledge and the know-how to make these goals successful. So Fritz, now I finally hand over to you and you get the opportunity to explain to us how it is going to be done. So thank you very much.
So thank you. Thanks a lot. We will flip you through, let's say our ideas, how this Global Entrepreneurship Center will work. But first of all, also from my side, thanks a lot, Holger, let's say to this opportunity that we can present us here. Thanks a lot to the Ministry of Economic Affairs of North Rhine-Westphalia for all the support we received so far, also for this whole preparation phase. That we were able to carry out the study. Thanks also to our partner of the Rheinkreis Neuss, which is our local partner, because the GEC is a mix between global and local partnership. And this is, I think, important to make it a success. So our global partners, they are with us today, the Think Beyond Foundation, our CIO, Daniella Russo, and our Chief Scientist, Greg Baxter. You will hear them. Later, we have Deloitte, we have Bird & Bird, of course, Holger is our partner. And then we have, of course, IP Oceans, which is also a part of the Global Entrepreneurship Center. And then our global platform, which I want to stress, which is the platform for transformative technologies, a global stakeholder platform for a global tech radar and to prepare our challenges. And then finally, our IT partner, Iris Trace. But now more into the details of the Global Entrepreneurship Center. What is our motivation? Our motivation is basically they SDGs and the Paris Accord. We believe that innovation has to play a key role in achieving these international, let's say, international policies and international targets. We need new technologies and transformative technologies to achieve these targets. And so there is, of course, a big challenge, but there is an opportunity, and 12 trillion market opportunity, which where we want to get part from. What is very important to understand here is that we follow a tech pull approach. Most innovation centers have a tech push approach. We have a tech pull approach. So we look at the problems from the climate agenda and the SDG agenda, and we try to scale up startups which will have a real impact with regard to these global challenges. And let's say, of course, as our own goal is to ensure a technical leadership also in the area where we are in North Rhine-Westphalia, which is a great tech region. And we believe that the transformation needs new business models to really succeed. And as Dr. Velling said, our goal is also to strengthen the ecosystem here in North Rhine-Westphalia and in the Rheinisches Revier, which is the old cold area, which goes through a real, let's say, transformation process at the moment. And the final goal is to create a global sustainability supercluster where we finally have sustainability startups. We call them SaaS tech startups to, let's say, work here, to settle here, to have let's say, a new way of working and to play a key role in this transformation. The next, please. So what is the problem? There is a problem, and there is something in our way, and in our way is that, in particular in the European Union, we don't scale enough startups. We produce enough startups, but only 0.4 to 1.8%, depending on the sector what you look at. Only 0.4 to 1.8 really scale. The rest stagnates or goes off the market. And this figure is, let's say, far too low. And it's not only the lack of risk capital, as many people always say in Europe, it's also the lack of scale-up services. And this is a problem in entire Europe. You see that the US still scales 3 times more startups than the entire European Union, and the Silicon Valley alone is at the same level as Europe. It's not only the risk capital, it's a number of other factors, and one is, let's say, the scale up services which are lacking. And well, our objective is to lead, let's say, tech startups through the second valley of death, and to produce a very interesting sustainability and climate tech pipeline. And we will produce a pipeline of 20 startups per year ready to invest. And through this, we really want to strengthen the ecosystem and build up a new global ecosystem on sustainability and the climate targets. Next, please. Now it's time of Tobias to come in and explain this next slide, as we have a team approach. So Tobias, please.
Yeah, Fritz, thanks. So some of you perhaps already asking yourself, so there are a lot of initiatives for startups already out there. So why an additional one? So in cooperation with the GAG, we performed a research about those programs, about those initiatives. And what we saw there is for startups from the tech part, so this is the SaaS tech part Friedrich mentioned, most of the programs are just covering the lower or medium technology readiness level. So mostly just up to 5, sometimes up to 6. But after that, there is a really lack of support for startups in the tech area, because in the higher TRL, the requirements for tech startups are so different for them than for a lot of other application startups. So, I mean, some of you perhaps know, but if you want to go commercial with a chemical process, for example, with an industrial biotech process, you have to go from the lab over the mini plant to over pilot plant, demo plant, full scale plant, and that's a lot other things, other knowledge, other know-how you need there, and of course, totally other facilities you need to really scale that process up. But what are the challenges in those high TRL for chem startups, for SaaS-tech startups? So what we saw was there are at least 4 points. It's the technical scale-up, so it's really like to go into a pilot plant, a demo plant. It is administration scale-up, so how to scale up the employee number, the IT, etc., etc. It is about relevant industry networks because you're getting closer to the market, and in this kind of areas you really need partners to test your product in the market before you can really go commercial. So you need a really good industry network. And the 4th point is you need a global market entry strategy with a strong sales component. During the study, we performed a research and we performed interviews with startups, and what we there found out was the following. So in the current programs, there is, for example, no room for sales training, for example. There is mostly, as the startup said, no relevant industry networks. They are mostly more general, and already mentioned things are the lab space, the demo plants, and the capital. The lab space is the first one. So what we learned from startups in Germany is that after the first settling in mostly in university, they really have big problems to growth already in the lab area. There are too long waiting times. Some wait for more than 2 years to get bigger labs, and if there are labs available, they are mostly too big. They're a factor 5 or 10, and therefore, of course, the cost factor is also 5 or 10, so it's too expensive for startups. The second point is the access to scale-up facilities. So this is really also a problematic thing. I mean, there are several pilot and demo plants in Europe, but they're often already booked out. In addition, you really need a know-how for scaling up your process, which is mostly not the key know-how you have from the founders, because they are mostly more in the product area, but not in the process area. And as a startup, as a small startup, you have often problems to deal with very big custom manufacturer, for example, because they are looking for big partners, big customers with big volumes, and so you really have to know how to handle them. And therefore, we see here a big issue that startups need a support in its technical scale-up. The third point is capital. I mean, that's more or less clear for most of you. In really high TRL with high demonstration scale-ups and then full-scale play-up, you need a lot of capital. I mean, also the European Commission saw that. So, and it's in the access to finance study. So, one new vehicle is the ECBF, the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund, but that, of course, is not enough. So, you really need a good network to a lot of investors to help startups to grow. So, all in all, what we also see here is there is the second value of dev. So, there were a lot of initiatives in the past in Germany to support the foundation of startups, but that's not a solution. That's just a shift of the problem, because then we are facing the danger that the startups drain due to the lack of support in a higher tier. And therefore, what we also saw in that market research, there is a need for a tailor-made concept like the GAG.
Thanks a lot, Tobias, for this very comprehensive overview. And I'm very grateful to Holger and you that you find the time even to give a presentation when you're so busy with organizing the conference. So thanks a lot. Yeah. Yep. And okay, so we go to the next slide, which is now our response. What is the GEC's response to this, to all of these challenges? And our response is based on a clear vision statement. Well, we scale promising innovative technologies companies with a sustainable and circular approach for a better future. That is what we want to do. And we want to be the first center, let's say, which supports SaaStech companies, focusing very clearly on sustainability and climate protection. So we will make a very strict assessment of their transformative character to really achieve this, let's say, this vision and mission. So our goal is really, we want to scale for impact. So this is a scaling center for very concrete impacts for these, let's say, global challenges. The next slide, please. But it's important to understand that we are a value-based scale-up center. So an innovation center, which is really based on values like circularity. As I said, sustainability, climate protection, we are fully committed to all these targets. We want to create impact. And it's also what I explain later, it's a partnership of generations. The successful scale-ups should be still part of the ecosystem and help to support the earlier startups. And we will act in a very transparent way. We will be completely open. We are neutral in terms of all stakeholders. So all stakeholders can participate in a very open and neutral way. So we are not an industry center. We are not a government center. So we are a very open and value-based center. That's very important to understand. The value base is for me so important because in the past we learned our lessons that the innovations of today can be the problems of tomorrow, and this has to be avoided. And we want to push those innovations which really, let's say, create a better world. Next one. Now you see the overall layout, let's say, of the Global Entrepreneurship Center, which will have on the left side a scaling factory. Where we will produce the pipeline. I come to this pipeline in a minute, and where we will have a very unique 360-degree service. This is a full-fledged service for all questions which are relevant for growth of a company. Yeah, it's IP and legal support, it's financial support, it's market and marketing support. It's industrial scaling, which is very important in terms of in tech areas, as also Tobias explained. It's also support in creating the right IT strategy from the beginning, because that is very important also for Europe in terms of entering all the different markets. So you need the right workflows and also the right personnel and recruiting mechanisms. This is all a challenge, in particular also for tech startups. This program will take, like in a factory, will be a 15-month program. It will be for 20 startups per year, and it will really have very individual support. So our, let's say, senior experts, our own staff, and our partners, they will go into the companies every week, work with them for 15 months, scale them to a level that they are ready for the next investment round, which means we will take them, let's say, just after the Series A, or some of them also prior, and bring them to a Series B and Series C investment. And then we have the Academy on the right side. The Academy has two parts. It has the so-called GEC Catalyst, which is an academy program for earlier stage ones. So it's 2 times 6 months. So more like for the ones in TL 4-5, in TL 5 and 6. And they will be made ready for our 360-degree service. So if they are a little bit earlier than the others. Because normally if you're in TL 9 and 8 and 9, if you have already 10 employees, you don't want to go through a normal academy program, but that's when our service comes in and gives them real scale-up support to scale from 10 to 100 employees. And that's the objectives. But we also have in the GAC technology, let's say, center, we will have facilities like labs, which is one of the let's say key problems in entire Germany is the lab access for let's say for tech startups, and we will try to let's say solve part of this problem. We will not be able to solve the full problem, but it's for us important to give access to startups also for lab areas. The next one, please. And this is now how we have our funnel management. We will do a global screening and scouting process. More of that will come from Daniella in a couple of minutes. We want to screen 500 to 1,000 startups per year. Our target is, as I said, technologies which solve the SDGs and the climate target. We will screen them. It will be an automatic screening at the beginning, and it will be a strict sustainability assessment that we finally support 80 startups per year in the academy, and 20 startups receive the fully fledged 360-degree support. And then, of course, the objective is that two to three startups settle also in our, let's say, what we call the GAC Valley, because we will have our industrial area, a sustainability cluster where the companies will have very good opportunities to settle. Of course, not all startups will have to settle here. They also can go back where they come from into their industrial areas. But our objective is that we have the key ones to stay here with us in North Rhine-Westphalia. Thank you. Next one. Then what is also important that we have a very clear technology focus, because we analyzed the SDGs and the climate targets in terms where are the big problem areas. That's one. And the other one was that we looked at the Maslow pyramid and say, where are the basic human needs? Yeah, and these together, where can we make the biggest impact? Where are the biggest problems? And where are the basic human needs which we need to look at? And now with this, we came to the areas of building and living. So it's the whole construction industry, but also furniture and so on. Then it's the whole agriculture and nutrition area. Then the textile area, which is very traditionally in North Rhine-Westphalia, and of course, mobility and transportation. In the center of this is for us is the sustainable chemistry, sustainable materials, and of course the energy part, which are all very crucial for innovations in these areas. If you look at, for example, new batteries, new insulation materials, let's say new basic material for textiles, a lot of that has to come out from chemical and material science. And of course, sustainable energy is a key enabler. And we also believe that, let's say, artificial intelligence and robotics will play a key role in these business models. So the combination of these business models with deep tech will be also in our focus. Okay, I hand over now to Sebastian, which will explain a bit more in detail the business model.
Okay, I will shortly present you or talk about the overall journey a startup can or is planned to work through our program. So as we already see and Fritz described this, that we have a detailed funnel management and assessment in terms of our values and our strategic focus. So once you went through our assessment and filter, you have basically two starting points within our center. Well, on the one hand, you can start within the academy, which will be then a 2 times 3 month program. So the first 3 months running to a more standardized course program and training program, which is built up on the individual startups that assign to it. So we put them into cohorts and put together the program in cooperation or together with Daniella as our Chief Innovation Officer. And this program will mostly be on a virtual basis in terms of online courses with an in-person kickoff in the beginning and an in-person description of the overall program, and then mostly in the form of online courses and assignments, which are then proven by us. After this first 3 months, we will have one first investor forum, which is not a general pitching way. It's more about a matchmaking between the startups and scale-ups and individual investors, which are kind of pre-assessed and partners of the GEC and actually fitting to the startup. And then after the first 3 months, we go into the next step, into the mentorship program, which is an additional 3-month program where we have certain mentors on the key areas we defined in the first 3 months next to the scale up. And at the end of the second 3 months, we will have an additional investor forum, and that might be then the exit for the scale up. If they say, well, we are fine with the program, we found an investor, we found a match, or it can actually be the beginning of our 360 degrees scale-up service, as Fritz already described, which is the second way you can start within the GEC. Is if you go directly to the GEC factory, where we have an advanced sustainability assessment if your technology and innovation is really solving the SDGs, and if the approach is, in our perspective, worth to be supported, and that there is a market opportunity and a market fit. Based on that, we will have a more in-depth due diligence approach in order to really assess, well, those are your key topics we want to solve or you need support. It's not a basic assessment top-down approach. It's in collaboration with the scale-ups to define, well, there are topics where you want to have support or where we see you need to have support. And then we will define in detailed scale-up journey together with the scale-up, together with our experts and our partners, and then start the overall scale-up service, which will be then divided into different service areas per month or per block. We give support on 2 service areas for the scale-ups, not too much per week, so to say, because the scale-up shall still be focused on doing business, on bringing forward their own development and the product, and not just sitting next to mentors or being overloaded with work from our overall program. And during that 15-month program, we will have, in addition, investor forums. We will have talks with investors and with the scale-ups on an individual basis, on a matchmaking basis, to partner kind of from the beginning with potential investors and define the way together, and hopefully have an exit at the end where the investors say, well, it's ready to invest, the scale-up is open for an investment, or they together identify a solution where they actually need investment. It's not always the case that you need to have an investor. It depends on your capital needs. So it's more it should be in the factory program a really individual approach, hands-on approach with the overall tracking and reporting, that we actually see our success of our support, of our services, to change our approach during the time. So this will be really also IT-based, that we have at the end have a really reporting package next to the scale-up that is then open for investment. And after our process or our service, the scale-up shall remain within our GEC ecosystem in order to give support to the next generation, to collaborate with other scale-ups, or just or to identify synergies with our partners. And of course, the goal or the target is to settle 2 to 3 scale-ups in the Rhinish Revier, and to strengthen the overall ecosystem here in North Rhine-Westphalia. Next, I will give over to Daniella, our Chief Innovation Officer. She has a lot of experiences in terms of pipeline development and startup support from the Silicon Valley, and give you insights from her work, her experience, what she's bringing into our center. Daniella, please.
Thank you, Sebastian. And thank you so much for this excellent summary of the GEC, the strategy, the mission, and the vision. I am joining you today from Silicon Valley, where our team is based for the time being until we open the office in Germany with the GEC. And we have a multi-year experience in commercializing innovation in high-tech, biotech, and most recently, clean tech. Our organization is an innovation accelerator, and thank you. And in so doing, we wanted to share with you lessons that we have learned from almost 10 years of experience in all of these areas. Clearly, there are a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, but our work in clean tech has been able to allow us to leverage all that learning and bring it in service of the GEC. Probably the first and most important thing I should say is the key success factor for a strong innovation pipeline is the existence of a healthy innovation ecosystem. And there is a lot of misconceptions of what this innovation ecosystem represents. Oftentimes it's reduced to just 1 or 2 parts of it, which is where is the demand and how much money is available in the total addressable market. But a healthy innovation system is a whole lot more than that. Demand begins with either civil society environmental needs, as we observe in the Sustainable Development Goals, or industry who is rising to meet these needs and may or may not have internal innovation available for this. Also, sometimes a well-articulated market need and a substantial market need. This market need, this demand needs to be well matched and aligned with focused research. And this came up several times in the conversations today. Where is the applied research? You know, does it meet the needs that are articulated? Or do we focus on research for research's sake, which is a very purist approach and very much beloved in academic institutions, but in many instances, applied research is what addresses specifically the problems that have been identified, environmental or technological gaps. So matching the type of research in academic institutions or innovation labs with these needs is very important. Again, that's a function of a well-detailed innovation ecosystem. The second piece, and the third rather, I should say, is whether this research is pushed through appropriate accelerators and accelerating methods into the world of entrepreneurship. Acceleration and entrepreneurship are 2 different things. And that is where we begin to discuss the technology readiness levels and, you know, the transition from one early stage proof of concept or 50 grams of material or something that is no longer just funded by a grant, but is capable of becoming a startup or a technology is ready to license. So the early stage to later stage transition and handoff is very important too. Appropriate financing vehicles are very important. Not all investment is the same. In the early stage of innovation, what is necessary is non-dilutive financing and grants to support the more research aspect of the innovation. In the later stages, innovation needs to be ready for an equity investment. So there is a whole blend of philanthropy, impact investment, and traditional venture investment. And you can throw into this federal funding, grants, and you know, government financing. And certainly certainly not least, the last is the favorable policy landscape. It cannot be understated. What is really important is to have government policies that understand the roles of innovation and very much like the government of the North Rhine-Westphalian understand and appreciate how much innovation is transforming the area and can continue to transform it, to be open-minded and creative in attracting innovators, making it easier for them to start businesses there, and creating policies that provide incentives for major market leaders or industry to incorporate innovation, which is expensive. So this is a model that has worked really, really well, and I'll just want to show or share with you two examples. The first one is the Internet of Things explosion in 2015. It is generally, no, not yet, Sebastian, thank you. It is generally believed that the Internet of Things explosion happened in 2015, where all the devices around us were Internet enabled. Your car, your home, your phone, and so on and so forth. But what really brought that explosion about is an investment, probably in the amount of a few $1 trillion of infrastructure and networking, hardware and software, government-funded research that started in the 50s with a goal of connecting physicists around the world in communicating with each other and sharing innovation or sharing their research. It continued by government funding up until the 80s and towards the 90s, where a little known company called Mosaic Communications took over, did an IPO and renamed themselves to Netscape. And in that technology was the browser, the essential enabling technology that made us all able to see what's posted on the internet. This was all government funding up to that point. So the browser transformed the interaction with this darknet. The browser actually had, this browser and many others had some of the technologies that my company worked on and we took to market. And later on, these technologies continue to build on by incorporating search and natural language analysis to the point where now you have the Googles, and before that it was Yahoo, Alta Vista, and Tomy, 5 search companies. And look how everything got transformed in the course of several short years, 10 to 15 years, and there was an avalanche, an explosion of applications. But it didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of policy landscape that was favorable to all this, that allowed free access to information, enabled e-commerce, and major investments in the infrastructure, which are largely unseen. Another good example I would bring up is the development of the COVID-19 vaccine. Just take a look at the amount of effort it took in such a short time, where you have a guaranteed market, you have federal funding from many places, North America, UK, the European Union, the ability through policy initiatives to reduce the amount of bureaucratic fat and delays that are between the drug discovery phases to expedite all of that. So this is a perfect example of an innovations ecosystem that works really well and produces results in an extraordinarily short time. And, a financially rewarding results. All that research was also based on a platform of government-funded R&D. And so the vaccine itself that we use today, the Pfizer and the Moderna and the Oxford vaccine, are all based on government-funded research and development efforts in a platform of this that have been established throughout the years. And Sebastian, would you mind the slide now? So the next slide, please. Thank you. So when we talked about the valley of death, I just want to make this point because it's very important for the existence of a strong ecosystem. The financing has to be appropriately suited to Valley of Death 1 and 2. The Valley of Death 1 we already talked about, and this is where a lot of the early stage innovation dies because there isn't appropriate financing in the form of grants and non-dilutive capital. The Valley of Death 2 is the area where we're focusing because it creates value to the investor and it creates value to industry. And in order to create this value, we need companies that are strong, well suited to the target market, that work with guidance from industry. So they develop solutions that are interesting either to the target market or the industry partner, and then they become valuable investment opportunity. And the next slide, please. So when we look into the program that creates the pipeline, that is essentially the key success factor that we've discussed: acceleration and scale of support. When the Internet of Things exploded and the Internet applications began their incredible journey, over 20,000 accelerators popped up all over North America and around the world. And it was because the investors were complaining that all of these new companies have interesting ideas, but they're, we call here in Silicon Valley, half-baked. You know, the ideas are great, but somebody else is doing something similar. They're not competing, they don't know of each other. So this was the role of the 20,000 accelerators that currently exist around the world: North America, South America, the European Union, the Northern Westphalian Excellent Startup Center is a good example of this. I was very impressed with Dr. Velling's understanding of the importance to support this kind of early stage innovation. These are the partners that we work with. So as we developed in our organization the model to create a pipeline for innovation for clean tech, we leaned heavily on accelerators in the early stage that are associated with universities. A lot of industry partners have their own accelerators that are well funded. The government accelerators, there are all these centers where interesting innovation kind of bubbles and it's happening. And this is the appropriate financing. There is non-dilutive grants. So we work with all of them. They're a source of pipeline. Where the GEC is going to add the most value, as we talked about already, is in the scale-up phase. And this is the phase where the company, the startup, delivers value to the investors, to the target markets, and the appropriate financing there is equity financing. So both of these stages are important, and in our strategy to develop the pipeline, we're going to aggregate them, but we're going to lean on partners heavily in the acceleration phase and develop unique capabilities in the scale-up phase. The more important thing also in the scale-up phase is KPI measurements. Key performance indicators in the sustainability space are still dark art. Nobody really knows what it is. Some measure it in terms of unique sustainability performance for their area, for their space. Others look into, in the sustainable chemistry space, you know, how you do the 12 measurements for a clean tech process. And there isn't an agreement or an understanding among investors, among industry, what are key performance indicators. We're going to work, and we're already working with major partners to create some common industry metrics. This is important. It will facilitate investment, and it will expedite the understanding of what is a good investment in that space. And sustainability measurements is something that the GEC is going to focus on and develop a program that will help in that effort. And the next slide, please. So how does this actually work? Innovation is not difficult to find. There is innovation on every level and everywhere. There is innovation in academia, in institutes, innovation hubs, independent research labs, user facilities. Our unique approach in this case is that we're not waiting for innovation to find us. We're actually starting with the problem we're looking to solve and reaching out to partners in all of these institutions through periodic ongoing innovation searches. We're constantly doing innovation searches in the areas of new materials, circular materials, green chemistry, new product delivery systems, also ag tech, carbon capture, technologies that the GEC and the problems that the GEC is focusing on will be the source of our innovation searches. They will focus our innovation searches. We're bringing in our partnerships with leading accelerators, Clean Tech Open, Plug and Play, Y Combinator, just to mention a few that I know you've heard of. but there are also a number of other accelerators, leading accelerators that we work with that are associated with industry. We have proprietary access to over 6,000 innovations at the U.S. technology transfer offices. We're developing similar partnerships with technology transfer offices at universities in the European Union and worldwide. So all of this is the focus of our search. As I said, we're looking for it. We're not waiting for these innovators to come to it. On the other hand, the next slide, please. A really great way of mobilizing interest and catalyzing interest around a particular topic is innovation challenges. And so we like innovation challenges because they create kind of a catalyst and a focus and an interest point of interest around a particular area. With innovation challenges, you basically open a very wide funnel, and then you're able to sort out what is useful and relevant and what works and what doesn't. So we're going to automate this process. We have a whole platform that will help us do that. But we will also bring in the academic partners. We will bring in partners such as IP Ocean and you know, the Y Combinator pipeline of innovation. All of these where innovators come out at technology readiness level, perhaps 5 or 6, and need somebody to pick them up and carry them over to the next phase. So this is a very important effort for us. It's an effort that leverages all of our partnerships, and we have hundreds of those in all of these different sectors. The academic partners are very important as well, because almost every academic institution in North America, and increasingly so in Europe and certainly in South America, have accelerator and or technology transfer office attached to it. But again, they end up at a point where the technology is registered and sits on a shelf and is waiting for somebody to find it. So that process is essential to us and to our effort to identify valuable innovation and bring it in through the pipeline. It is a two-phase approach. At the beginning, you know, we will use our online portal. It's a tailored technological platform that we've developed to help us sort out thousands of innovations. And in the second part is where the tailored program is offered to a subset of qualified startups, qualified entrepreneurs that pass our pre-selection and screening criteria. And the next slide, please. Oh, sorry, I guess I thought I had one more. So I can keep talking like this, as you can tell, but the essential here is really, the essential here is that we're combining our technology expertise, our expertise in developing pipeline of innovation in these areas, along with processes and technologies that have served us well in the past, as well as over 500 partnerships with academia, industry, other accelerators, and innovation hubs. So with this on mind, I'll turn it over to Sebastian for a conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Daniela. We will go now quickly sum up and look for some of the opportunities, let's say, for all our partners from the different parties, be it the government, academia, industry, investors, and scale-ups. This is what we have put on this slide here, which so this is what we are looking for discussion, how you come on board of our, let's say, of our ecosystem. So you can be a partner in the ecosystem. Yeah, of course you can look, let's say, you can get some of the services from this. You can be part of the service delivery. You can, of course, be a scale-up who gets the services. You can also, of course, be a partner in the collaborative innovation challenges, which is Daniela mentioned, which is very important to us, because we will do challenges for the thematic areas which we are focusing on. These challenges, of course, will always have also investor fora, and we will have a first one also this tomorrow. Of course, there we have put a new term, which is I hope it's okay with Holger, where we have said we will develop the European chemistry partnering into one additional brand, which could be the European sustainability partnering. So we will, of course, these type of events like today, and we will develop this further, let's say, with Holger and Tobias. You can be part of our global stakeholder platform, the platform for transformative technologies, which will be run by Welle van der Weert and Lieve Fransen. They are looking to the global level, and this will be a sort of a tech radar and a stakeholder discussion platform to really get down to the real transformative technologies and to the right questions in the challenges. And of course, you can also be either be part of the technical facilities, or you can be a partner to render some technical facilities, to sponsor some technical facilities, let's say for the startups, what we want. So this was a quick run through the Global Entrepreneurship Center, and now back to the to Stefan.
So thank you very much, everyone. I still have on the agenda a discussion about the sustainability assessment. You're going to say something about that by a slide?
Stefan, I suggest, because it was a lot of presentation now, we have, of course, a slide on this as well, but that we first have probably open the discussion, and then we'll see if we have time, we come to the sustainability part, and then also our vision for the sustainability cluster, yeah? But probably the discussion now first, because it was, yeah?
Right, I totally agree. I totally agree. So
thank you,
everybody. Now let's come to the rules of the discussion. If you want to add something, comment something, please use the public chat. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. There's a little button, a hand button on the bottom of your screen. It says Hand erheben in German. I don't know if you have a sort of an international version of Zoom, but is raising your hand or whatever, probably. Daniella, does it say raise your hand or hand raising? Yeah, whatever. You just press the button of the yellow hand, is yellow in my case, and then I can see that you want to say something, and I'm trying to get to you as quick as possible. I'll be looking after sort of the speaking time, so please don't feel offended if I interrupt you, if it's taking too long, just so that we can use the time very efficiently. And so it's sort of the privilege of the host to ask the first question, and so I'll start in the panel. So thanks to all of you to explaining to us this very ambitious sort of project. And what I was very keen on seeing was that you said it's a technology pull approach. So you're not taking solutions and then look for sort of aligned problems, but you're looking at the problems right now and you're trying to find solutions. Now, if you, coming from business chemistry, so the economy side of things, I would say if you have a very market liberal radical approach, you would say if there is demand, there will be no problem. So they will find capital, they will find the capital to scale up. So why, it seems to be that there is a systemic problem, that even though there are problems on one side, and there is someone on the other side of the valley offering a solution on small scale, this demand is not enough motivation or pull to pull them over this valley. So why do we have to support these companies, even though we see the problem, even though we see the demand?
Yeah, well, this is the typical challenge of the transformation where we are in. Well, this is a very important question, of course, what you ask here. If you don't have probably in some areas, for example, the legislative background, yeah, legislation is normally also pushes new technologies in the market and pulls them then also, but in a lot of areas we don't have that yet. Yeah, so there is no force, and we have a lot of old markets which work completely against the transformation and the transformation objectives we have. This is still of course happening every day, and these market forces are extremely strong. That is why they need support. What we see, what is very, in 10 years ago, I would say this would be very difficult. But today, when you see that money moves towards sustainability and towards climate protection, and that more and more investors, get interested in this, they will demand a new pipeline, and they will demand a new portfolio. And in order to deliver this portfolio, there we have to develop these new companies, these new ideas that of course, that they are ready for this type of investments. There is a problem also in the venture capital market. There is a huge problem with regard to tech, because the time to market is too long for them. So from my perspective, also one of the answers to you is there is a reform needed in the business model of industry, but there's also reform needed in the models of the venture capital industry. And that is that should be part of the journey, and that should not be let's say forgotten. And we are very happy, we are very ready to also to take this discussion forward. And well, there are new you see a lot of new actors in the market, like the European Circular Bioeconomy Fund, and you see the changes, but it's not enough yet.
Right. I wanted to add something. I wanted to add something to this. We work a lot with industry, and here's what we're observing. There is definitely demand for circular materials, for example, for sustainable chemistry. But what industry wants is technologies that are at the later stage of readiness and almost ready to incorporate. And technologies don't get to that point without some level of support. And so if for us, for our society, it's important to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, then it's not just the money making mechanism, it's not just a market-based approach. There actually needs to be some more help from the ecosystem for these startups to be successful, because it's a matter of our survival. So it's different. In North America, the desire is always to say, well, if there is a market and if there is money, then they will get there. And they might eventually in 20 or 30 years' time. But we're looking into the need to quickly decarbonize our economy, to transition towards circular material. That is a strategic need for our society and for humankind. And for that, it needs more support than just basic market forces.
Yeah, actually, we need to be fast.
Yes.
The German NASA actually calculated that we have another 7 years until the CO2 budget is used up for the 1.5 centigrade goal. So there we are in it right now. This, if you call this a tipping point, if you geologically speaking, we are in the middle of that tipping point, or at the edge of it, or whatever, because 7 years is nothing in terms of climate change and those sort of long-term changes that we're facing. Now, what I'm really wondering is what role is, because Fritz, you said that it's persistent old markets that are blocking actually innovation and the uprising of new technology, even though they face self-destruction in the sense of, if you're an old oil-based or carbon-based sort of business, maybe someday someone will put out a legislation, a law, that you're forbidden to act on the market. So, but that's a very disruptive sort of thing. So from day 1 to 2, you're out of business. And even if we, even having that kind of threat over your head, I mean, we've seen this with Volkswagen and other companies on the automobile industry, they're very reluctant to act and very reluctant to move and very reluctant to offer, for example, an exit pipeline for startups in the chemical industry. I mean, this is very familiar for the pharmaceutical industry because they have this loss of exclusivity, and then they have competition in the market. But in chemical industry, we don't see that. So what can we do about these dinosaurs and very persistent sort of carbon-based industry that are so well off and they're just running? I mean, it's a It's an excellent business model. It's oil in one end, it's plastics out in the other end. It's been running for decades, and demand is rising and rising and rising with populations and wealth rising on a global level. So how can we pull them in? I mean, it's not about forbidding and putting up laws. It's about, cooperation and pulling them in, or isn't it? I don't know.
No, well, of course. Well, everybody has to do, let's say, it's part of the business. If it's politics, if it's academia, but also, of course, the big industry. But the problem is, of course, their business models. Well, a lot of them, of course, we say, okay, I run them until it's to the end by legislation or yeah. And of course, the problem is most of the chemical industry is not a B2C business. So the pressure is not from the customer yet there. So that is another point. But the pressure, they all feel the pressure now, and I think that is our approach. We put new business models besides which can be successful, and that's the whole point. Yeah, the new business models, and they will feel the competition, and then they also will move, I'm sure.
I think the most important point is to really disrupt the industry. You have to come up with solutions that are way better, that are different, and the consumer is then demanding. Well, the pressure has to come from the consumer, and once you come up with an innovation, a business model or product which is really disruptive, you will see that there will be too much pressure on the old dinosaurs, or they actually run out of business. Look at Kodak. They never believed that the digital photography will really disrupt their business. And at the end, Kodak is not really existent anymore, and there are different players in the market. And that's actually what we need, and that's what the GEC wants to support.
This morning, I heard a very interesting statement from a venture capitalist based from a big chemical company. He actually stated that the investment is moving or turning away from making money out of money towards purpose. Would you agree? Is that actually happening, or is that just another blinding position when it comes to long-term investment? As you said, chemical industry is. I mean, chemical industry is part of the solution, I believe very much in, and it's been part of the problem. 95% of all the products we're wearing right now are made from oil somewhere. So tonight, if you look at the little badges in your back of your shirts, take a very close look. So, but what is that actually happening, or is that just it, or isn't it? I mean, that would be great in a sense, and very hopeful, a very thing that'll bring hope to me, and gets us out of that kind of depression. We're not gonna move things, because if that is really happening, I mean, GEC would be right on spot, wouldn't it?
That's where we are. Because you see every day that this is the new trend. The new trend is impact investment. Of course, it's still small, but you can see every day it grows every day. Every day there is a new impact fund coming up. Yeah, the big established funds they start that they test. Yeah, and of course this is why we are there. They need a pipeline. They need a pipeline for their investments, and they need a pipeline which is also sustainability proven. And that's exactly what we need to do, because there will be, and in the first place, a lack of investments. Yeah, if they all turn around. Yeah. And
maybe to add that, on the one hand, of course, there is a shift towards impact investment, but there's this shift is a result of entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs which claim themselves to be impact entrepreneurs. So there is not only the focus on making money, making as much money as fast as possible. It's really within the younger generation, or my generation, so to say, to say, well, I want to have an impact within the market, on the environment, on the climate, because we kind of grew up with the whole climate action and the climate problems, and there are more and more impact entrepreneurs which will be more open to investors who share the same values and that share the same way of development, not just to make money, but really to make an impact.
triple bottom line is becoming increasingly important as a factor in investment, people, profits, and planet. And this is why developing metrics for what this triple bottom line is also increasingly important. So giants like Morgan Stanley and Deloitte are working on creating what these metrics are. And I can also tell you that we work a lot with industry, and inside industry alliances, such as the New Plastics Economy, that is a circular economy for plastics, or the Alliance for Sustainable Fabric Fashion, also various alliances around sustainability that are within industry. There is a great need, led by reputational risk for most of these brands, to create a sustainable agenda and to increase their impact investments. Exxon, one of the biggest oil producers in the world, has as a leading ad a woman scientist walking with a, a brevet of green material, saying how they're capitalizing on investments in alginate oils. So it's all happening. And the big challenge there, of course, is industry is slow to move. So there needs to be either danger, reputational risk, or a policy instrument to accelerate this and to reward them. There is no doubt it's happening.
I would like to add something to the whole discussion. So what we saw in the last couple of weeks, for example, was that we had a lot of talks to big industry partners regarding an energy efficiency product, and from 20 big companies, there was just one who said, okay, this is a reduction of our CO2 footprint, that's good. 19 said it's just about the business case, right? So it is still, especially for stock exchange companies, it is about money. So that's the problem. Stefan, you said it is where money is promised, there should be capital, of course, but as we all know, is that the market does not work every time very well. So sometimes it's not working out. So I think there is a need for support, because if you came with the sledgehammer and from tomorrow on there is the CO2 penalty in an increasement like, I don't know, head blasting, you of course need the other opportunities. So politics cannot make that impact with a high CO2 penalty when there is no other good alternative, because then of course the consumers say, okay, why are all my products are now so expensive? We want sustainability, but we want to can pay for it. And that's the thing why I think we need support for the startups, so that we have alternatives to carbon or fossil-based products, because the companies will not finance it enough, I think.
Well, I definitely agree. I definitely agree that we need that support. There is this gap, and of course, dumping in the sense of preventing new market participants to enter the market, new technologies to enter the market, has been a very viable tool to keep competitors off the market. And if you're in a market as a very well-established company, a huge global player, and you have a new technology in the market which is low scale and high price as an equal sort of, then of course you can prevent any sort of newcomer to make any difference on the market. That's true. So in the sense of, if we want that kind of change, we need to politically intervene in the markets. We can't have these kind of radically free moving markets, because it's not going to happen. That's something. I think that's something we have to realize. Politicians have to realize, and we as actors in these markets have to realize this is going to happen, because temperatures are rising and CO2 emission is still on the rise exponentially. So no matter what we've done so far, and we've got 7 years left. So that's very interesting. But I want to emphasize, looking at my watch, there's one last point I want to emphasize. When you, because having been an entrepreneur, a chemical entrepreneur myself, I was very young. I mean, I started, depends on the perspective, of course, but from today on, I was pretty young, and I was just freshly finished my PhD, and then printed out a sign and said Nano Solutions GmbH, and off I went. And I had practically no knowledge about how to do that. So I had these mentors, etc., etc. And then after 5 years, investors pulled the plug. And after 5 years, I just felt ready to start, actually. So there are people who are capable. I'm not saying that I'm capable of growing a company. I'm capable of starting something. And as we know from experience, you have these people who are very agile at the beginning, bring people together, making people work together as a team, starting things, but then growing things, scaling things up, getting more professional is a different skill set.
Yes,
and it's a different mindset. So how strongly will you intervene into those teams? Because what I really, is my experience, my just very humble, sort of small empirical experience, that you have a break there. Most of the teams will not survive the mindset gap. It's a valley of death as well, a very special valley of death. So you think of, yeah, we 10 people, we're just 10 friends, we'll go on and go on. But then suddenly you need to deal with reach, with, you know, legal stuff, with patent attorneys, with a fabrication site. Responsibility is growing. How do you exchange them? What do you tell them? What do you do? I mean, you know, you can offer them all that support, but what do you do with the people actually who are in charge at the moment, but you might see that they don't fit the sort of next step?
That's a common founder's problem, and not all founders survive through the end. Several of the companies I've started, we've shed founders in after the first or second phase. Sometimes the investors will come and tell you to get rid of the founder, give them a lot of money and make them go away. So in our program, in the scale-up program in particular, a big part of it is team development, understanding where the management gaps are, where the need is, what kind of talent and skill is needed, and complementing it. We find out that team development problem is one of the key factors for startups not succeeding. It's not undercapitalization, because investors invest in teams, not just in technologies. It's actually the team cohesion and the capacity to learn, to pivot, and to understand guidance. It's not inherently possible. In the space of scientists, as my business partner can testify, because he's the biotech guy, it's even more difficult, because scientists often tend to rationalize things not as business people, but from the standpoint of technology. In high tech, it's the same thing. You have an engineer who is enamored with the technology, but doesn't understand at all where the customer need is. So a big part of the scale-up program that we offer is team building, mentorship, and development of solid teams poised for success.
And will you actually like sort of interim management people on the side of the teams? Is that
yes, one of our partnerships is with business schools around the world. So we have a partnership with business schools in North America, with INSEAD, with schools in Barcelona and Southern Europe. They bring MBA graduates who are ready to jump into a team. We also have a whole mentorship program that we've developed with executives from industry who are eager to contribute their skills to these new startups. So the program is very elaborate. We've used it for the last several years for our work on clean tech, in plastics and in circular materials. And you bring an industry expert, they participate, somebody with the experience, they participate in the board meetings, in helping get the company on its path. And then, you know, they either continue with the company if they're interested or not. This is a program that we've used from the National Science Foundation SBIR program, also Stanford University Accelerator. It's a very elaborate part of our scale-up program. Yes.
But indeed, we will go really into the teams and develop the teams with the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So we will, together with HR partners, we will really analyze what do they need in terms of team, and what kind of capacities, what type of is it more the management side, is it a technical side, how much of it, yeah, and then so this is a very important part of our service, yeah, HR service.
So thank you to all of you. Mr. Goethert, I'm sorry that there is you made a point there in the open questions asked, you might read on the panel, which is worth another day of discussion. But I don't want to open it right now. I'm sorry for that. Thank you everybody for participating. Thanks for the insights. I think there is lots of room of discussion, especially within this industry. My feeling is this industry has not yet realized how important it is on that path of change and making a difference. This industry, and of course the industries around it on the sides, biotechnology, etc. So I think, and it's still very interesting as what you said, Tobias, if 1 out of 20 actually does see the difference and does see the point of sort of sustainable in the sense of time. And sustainability always has that bit of time within the wording. Sustainability means to sustain something over time. It's not to sustain something until tomorrow or until yesterday. It's to sustain something over time and generation. And as long as we only have one Earth, we need to act fast. So all the best. Speed it up as fast as you can. We're relying on you. Put out as many of those companies as you can. Put out as many of those products as you can. Me as a part of this society, as a father, looking at my kids, what they're looking at, you know, I can only hope on that there is that we have impact-making people who have the courage actually to go out and do something, because that's what we need to do. So thank you again. Thanks to all of you. Thanks.
Yeah, and Stefan,
we should just keep it open and carry on. But time is up, as I see.
Yeah.